Ladies and gentlemen, how you doing, Christine? Are you doing good?
I'm good. I'm
Okay.
good. I'm good. I'm good. Hey,
right,
this is
let
like the
me
most. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What are you
I
saying?
said this is the most efficient, like getting on Zoom and podcast that we've had in a while.
Oh, that's good. I still feel like a chicken with his head cut off, but
No,
I'm
I
glad you
think so.
feel differently, and I appreciate
Yes.
that.
We're kind of put together ish.
Well, you are maybe. I'm trying to get my life together.
Yeah, no,
You
I just
see
rolled
it.
out of bed.
We're live.
Hello. Yes, yes.
Oh, snap, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, one and all, ladies and gentlemen, to another fantastic episode of the Get Realisms podcast. I'm Adam Chase Rennie.
And I am Christine Chen.
We're back. Look at that. And as promised,
And there's people.
And there's people, 4 people here on Instagram. There's a few people on Facebook. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. If this is your first time, you have no clue what's happening. Well, this is a filming podcast, and we're here hanging out with writer, director, Christine Chen and Schlubby Dummy Adam J.S. Rennie. So
no, not Schlubby. Super talented production designer, Adam Chase Rainey.
Yeah, that's me.
That's you.
Christine, how's it going? How's
good. I am.
You're on set right now, technically.
Technically, I'm coming live. Oh, Reese is on Instagram. Yay! Hi, Reese. Reese is the production designer for Ursula. And I'm actually coming live from Long Beach. It was our weekend from set. So we've been trying to, be COVID safe and do outdoorsy type things like go to the beach instead on our weekends. Yeah. Hi, Reese. Yes, it was our weekend, and we are leaving again today to go back into the mountains to continue shooting tomorrow. And actually, Carly's inside. We're staying with her cousin. And we just looked at the call sheet and realized that tomorrow we are effed.
Why do you say that? Why?
This has been a very heavy practical film, which is awesome because I'm literally recreating Ursula but in a different way. So Ursula, as you know, was a lot of practical effects, right? And
speaking of which, sorry to interrupt. Howdy, Reese. We love you, buddy.
Yay, Reese. Oh, and congratulations to Reese.
Yeah.
Yes,
oh my gosh.
His film is in his first, I believe, directorial debut short film will be playing at the Shreveport, Louisiana Film Prize. He is a top 20 film, and we're really, really excited for him about that. So congrats, Reese.
You bald-headed genius, Reese, you. God, we love you. We love you. I'm very proud of you, Reese. I'm super excited for you. Yeah. And I can't wait to see it either. Yeah. We love you, buddy.
But oh, good. Roxy's on here too. So she will also know that tomorrow we are effed. So Roxy is coincidentally on the same project as well for tomorrow. This project has been amazing. Like everybody on the set has been awesome and stuff. It's just a very hard shoot. And it's really funny because it's like deja vu, because we literally also did, Ursula is a camp film also with heavy prosthetics that's practical in the woods, in the elements and stuff like that. And it's a horror comedy.
Hot elements. Yeah.
Which is based, and nakedness, which is literally our carbon copy. Yeah, nakedness. Carbon copy for this film. The only difference is there's the beauty of this is that there's actually 15 days, not 11, and they aren't dealing with mermaid tails or water. So, but it's so funny because the producers will like come to me being like freaked out about, tomorrow's gonna be a heavy prosthetics day, and our lead actress is gonna be naked. I'm like, you know what? This sounds oddly familiar.
Oh, deja vu.
Deja vu. I was like, don't worry, we actually practiced already for this set. Like we
So
already
you were
did this.
born
Yeah, we
prepared.
already did this, and we're just doing it again, and it's just gonna be so much easier.
Been
Yeah,
there, done that, girlfriend. We're
yeah,
we're we're moving on here.
yeah. Except Roxy's having a ball because she actually has an entire FX team, so she doesn't have to deal with any of that effects. She still just does makeup and stuff like that. Which so she's like, I'm doing great. Um, she's like, this feels weird. Yeah, I believe Roxy said it feels weird that I don't have to freak out about everything. I'm like, nice for you. I had a
Wow.
momentary like, oh crap. Not, when you come back from the weekend from something, you don't quite remember like what you have scheduled for the first day of the start of next week. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah. All
and
the time.
Carly
Every
kindly
time.
Carly kindly reminded me and was like, I have to send like actor warnings and like let them know when their call times are going to change, right? And she was like, Karen's going to be in Zombie tomorrow. I'm like, fuck.
Oh
I totally
no.
forgot about that. So I
Yeah.
go and look at the schedule. I'm like, oh god, because putting like this isn't like when you think zombies, you think like Halloween. Sorry, I can't even say things. Halloween, like basic, just some greenish, makeup like that, like super simple. No, this is some of the most intricate zombie makeup I have ever seen in my
Really?
life. And it's amazing. We've got like jaws are like half melted off and like falling off with like weird
I saw
teeth
the
sticking
Instagram
out.
posts. They're pretty gnarly.
Yeah,
I like them.
super gnarly. And like hands that are like part trees and like weird, like it is nuts. Well, when you want something like that, which is art and beautiful, it takes a very long time. So to get
Very long.
our actress into that hair and makeup, it's at least 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours to do that. And then on top of that, like these are the things that nobody else in the world thinks about. So when an actor shows up on set, their clock starts ticking, right? And
Right.
it doesn't end till they're out of whatever prosthetics and they're ready until they go home. So like most sets forget about that end part. They only think about like, oh, we're just putting the actor in. I mean, same, I knew that prosthetics would take, but you go in and you take the 3 hours and then they send the prosthetics and stuff like that. And then at the end you forget, oh, we're wrapped, cool. But then like hair, makeup, and VFX and all, or special effects are all like stuck for another like 2 hours trying to take off like the prosthetics and stuff like that. Layla knows this. Yeah, she got stuck in the prosthetics and just being stuck, having those taken off for like 2 hours. So yeah, we as ads have to, especially Carly has to remind me and build those times in, because that's all, especially in Saxa, it's all what we call OT, so overtime.
Overtime. Yeah.
Overtime. So, but yeah, tomorrow I was reminded that we're effed.
Yeah, but you gotta see the brighter side.
It'll be cool. We start off with a full on zombie transformation, which will take 2.5 hours. And then towards the end of the night, we have a 2-part werewolf transformation.
Wow.
2 parts, because the first
Really?
part takes 2 hours and the second part takes 2 hours. Yeah. So there's 2 parts to this werewolf transformation. Like it's old school, like real cool, full on prosthetics. And
Holy
it's been
shit, that's
amazing
amazing.
seeing Gabe work. He's an incredible, like old school
The
VFX
VFX
artist.
artist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really, really cool.
Shout out to him.
So yeah, so that's gonna be fun. But we're juggling those times. We're juggling the times it takes, because sitting in those prosthetics is not very comfortable at all either. And tomorrow, not only do we have those prosthetics, we're outside in the dead of the heat. And you would think like California would be nice and cool. It
Not really.
is
Not
in
not
certain
during this
parts,
time of the
right?
year.
In certain parts it is. But for the majority, like where we are in Fraser Park, it's 93 tomorrow. And then you're 93, it's dry, and the air quality apparently is bad because there's fires somewhere.
There's fires everywhere. Yeah.
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 And on top of like Carly's doesn't have a voice because she's been trying to whatever crap is in the air is really affecting her. And
shoot.
and on top of that, you're in the heat, like it just, you've got to control those times, you know. So it's just good thing we had a lot of practice on Lee. Yeah, we had opposite problems. We had water and we had cold water. So yeah, but that's where we are. For, you know, we're becoming camp creature feature experts. Like
Yeah,
it's a niche. I think it's a total niche.
but it's just
And
the stress emitting from your voice is just absolutely hilarious, because you're just like, yeah, we've done this before. Fuck.
yeah, we're it's no suck. Yeah, we already know. It's in slow
Yeah.
motion. I can see it like
Because
coming at us.
also, like, you remember how awesome it looks too, right? Like the
Yeah.
prosthetics, like especially for Ursley, it's just, oh my gosh, it's so rad. But then the process of it all and getting it there and then out of it and then in and then out of it every day. Yeah.
Yeah.
that shit is just like, you don't work out that stuff until later, and then you're just like, oh, mermaid squad. Let's go.
Yeah, Mermaid Squad. Mermaid Squad. That's totally gonna make it into the credits. Mermaid Squad.
Special
Yeah.
thanks, Mermaid Squad.
Yeah, special thanks to the Mermaid Squad, because that was a whole thing. But then you look at the footage, and I'm just excited for people to see it. Is like, and it's so awesome. Like it's crazy that we did that. You know, I think that's been the most fun is reliving everything within the footage while I'm editing. I think that's the best, because while I was in it, it was complete. The 11 days was a complete blur to me. Like,
Yeah.
there are moments that, and unfortunately, the parts I did remember were the parts that were the most difficult and like most stressful, right? So
Right.
sadly, it wasn't the positive parts of the film. So I get to relive the positive parts of the film through the editing process. Be like, oh, look, we did that. Oh, that worked. Oh, you know, that I'm glad that, like, for example, although by the last day I don't know, like, it was great. Our finale on the finale day was pretty epic. And it was one of those things where like we weren't sure at all whether it was going to turn out or not. And I gotta say, it's one of my favorite parts in the film, how it ended up. I look at that and I'm like, how did we do that? And then I
It's
look at it,
gotta
I'm
be
like, why
wild.
are we this? It's wild, and it's really cool. Like, you just sit there and you're like, I think I I'll nitpick the film, you know, throughout the whole thing, of course. And I'm still nitpicking the film. I'm in the final stages of what we call the trim pass, just massaging everything. But when it gets to, I would say, starting from when the dead of the night, or what we would call the all is lost moment type
Yeah.
thing, is ramping up to the finale, I forget that I'm nitpicking it. It's so exciting to watch and to like see and realize like we made this happen. Like, I don't know how, but we did, you know. That it's from that moment on that I'm just like glued to. I myself have, even though I was deep entrenched in the film, love watching the finale part of it. I don't know if Fuga's on here, which is Nick Longoria, our composer. I'd be interested in knowing what he thought, but I don't know, especially when you're watching it like on a big screen with the epic music. Like, I'm telling Nick and our who's our composer, and Jeffrey Reed, who is our sound designer. I'm like, marvel the crap out of this, like this end sequence. Like, this is, because the thing is that you don't get to do this much for indie films, because we don't have the budget. And most of the times indie films are like two people talking in a house, right? Because that's
Right.
that's the money that you have to do it. So having these epic scenes to do epic scoring and epic sound design is actually pretty rare for indie films. And so I was like, just do like ridiculous, like this is Marvel. right here. Just do this in this part, channel your inner like epic Marvel, whatever superhero, high budget film in this little moment of the finale. Yeah, because it's nuts. And I mean, I want channel Lord of the Rings, channel like just epicness into this finale. And it's I don't know, when I watch this and this finale, I'm just very, very, very proud of what we were able to accomplish. So yeah, so I guess in conclusion for my long diatribe is that while we're filming, unfortunately my memories are usually the hard, negative, stressful parts, but I'm getting to relive all the positives of the film through the editing process. Yeah. So, but it's almost there. It's just the last bit of tweaking. And then, you know what? I'm glad I took this time, that I had some time away from it. And I definitely calmed down from and was able to accept having this time away from it. Kind of forced to, but my friend Christine Banty said, well, I was talking to her one day after our first or second screening, like, hey, I just feel this immense pressure that I've, got to finish it. I got to finish it, and I got to do it now, fast next week. She's like, what's that pressure coming from? And is it you yourself giving yourself that pressure? Or is there literally somebody who's like, you have to finish it tomorrow? And I thought about it, and I'm like, you know what? You're right. It's me.
It's you.
Yeah. It's literally me giving me that pressure. And so
because I feel it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. We both, because you have this immense like because if you don't have a deadline, it feels like you're not going to get anything done. Right. So exactly. You just all you're doing is just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and keep tweaking and keep fixing and do whatever. That's why I made the joke last week. Like, when you asked me, like, when am I going to be done with the script? I'm like, I think about 7 years from now. Like it's a joke, but it's sort of like kind of the reality of what I am feeling right now. It's just like, yeah, if you don't have a deadline, you're just kind of swimming in this like nowhere land.
Neverland.
You're constantly in it instead of just like getting focused and really having a specific deadline. But you sometimes tend to stress yourself out, like, as do I. Like and sometimes like I'm an asshole because I was a terrible kid in school, by the way. Like constantly, like, I think I did homework maybe about like 25% of the time when I was in school and shit like that. I was a terrible student. Like I felt so bad for the teachers who have to dealt with me, but I could not focus for the life of me.
Yeah.
So when I finish my work, that's my given time. But if I have a deadline with it, that's not gonna be as as I want it to be, because I'm just pushing this deadline and now I'm just phoning it in last minute.
Right.
And that's the one thing I hate about deadlines the most, is that I don't want to feel like I'm just shoehorning a story in and then it's not the thing that you wanted in the first place, but there has to be a balance, right? It has to be a gray area where, no. I'm not saying get deadlines away. No. Still have deadlines. Still have follow-up. You have to follow through with your shit no matter what. But also don't stress yourself if one day the cylinders aren't firing as you once had it a week ago. And you're like, what the fuck happened last week? Like I was on a goddamn roll. Like what happened? And you're just losing your momentum. Sometimes you just have a bad day. Sometimes you just have a bad day, or a bad week. We all have that and stuff. But it's the fact that you could push through it and keep going and keep writing and be inspired by the thing you're doing. That's what motivates me the most. Is just like, if I'm angry in that day, I'm going to write about it. I'm going to talk about it however I'm possibly can, because I'm a loudmouth and I can't shut up when I was a kid, so I'm always going to do or write or say something just for the sake of my creative brain, to get that sense of accomplishment for the day. So I can end the day nicely instead of like going to bed, like staying up all night thinking like, what the fuck? Like, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I do this? Like, why am I wasting my time? When really, if I set deadlines for myself, I think I can follow up with things a little more.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, like I'm so scared that this story won't work out if I just kept like,
Yeah.
right. If I just speed myself off and just be like, fuck it. Okay, here you go. I did a script and now I got a script written for the sake of getting a script written, which is completely not the point. You're trying to make a story, if it's a good story and if it takes you 10 days to write it, fuck yeah. Hell yeah. But that's not how I operate. Like it's just, it's going to be a much longer process, and also a process that I'm still learning. Like I'm still actively learning how to write. I'm nowhere near an expert in writing, like at all. Like I think of writers as like Mount Olympus. Christine's already up there in Mount Olympus. I have yet to start the trail. Like I'm just beginning the trail. Like I still have a whole, and it's an uphill battle, by the way, Mount Olympus. So I still have a long ass ways to go. And I know that if I keep practicing and keep writing every single day, hopefully I'm going to be that much better than I was a year ago when I started writing the script. Like I started looking at previous drafts of this script that I'm writing, and I'm like, holy shit, this is a completely different story. It's a completely different story than I had 2 years ago writing the script. It's insane. And I think it's better this go around too, because every time I read it, I read this new version that I have with the ending that I've been having in my head that just made sense all along, which by the way came from my very first draft, which comes to show you how not fucking confident I am in getting an ending. I already wrote an ending. It was already there. I just never fucking bothered to look back at my shit and be like, hey, it was actually kind of a good ending. Terrible script, but good ending. That was actually kind of cool. Like, why didn't I do that? Instead of just like staring into the fucking wall, into the abyss, wondering where the fuck is my script going to go,
Yeah. But that's where it is, where it's like time is okay because it gives you perspective, right?
Yeah.
Like you never would have known that unless you taken the step away from it to be like, oh wait, this part is actually pretty good, or oh wait, this part that I thought was good actually is shit. Like that's the biggest thing I'm learning from having, like, forcing myself. Like when I say force, I like literally enforcing myself to take time from it, because it's like there is this immense pressure that you put on yourself. And I think it's the realization that this pressure is being put on by myself that made me feel like, okay, made me realize that I need to take a step away from it, that there's nobody chasing after me and being like, you have to finish it now, blah, blah, blah.
Cut yourself a break.
Literally myself chasing after me. So it's okay.
Well, it's good to cut yourself a break,
Yeah. It's helped. Like I can tell. I can go in and look at stuff being like, okay, I see what people are saying now. I see where things that I can cut that I may not have wanted to cut because I was emotionally tied to it, or I see parts where it's not as bad that or just time to think about like how to solve something. Like not too long ago, I finally solved the spot that wasn't feeling quite right, which was the first time they're in the woods doing the spell. Basically, I was like, that part never quite felt right, but because having taken the time away from it and having time to process it, I naturally think I came up with a solution. We'll see. But yeah, time away does a lot. And it's very hard to give yourself that time away when you are exceptionally type A or driven, or just put a lot of pressure on yourself. So
and yeah, that's why.
And when everybody, and when people are also, when you feel like people are putting pressure on you, and I'm sure like being asked, because people are excited, hey,
Oh, no.
when's your
Yeah.
script coming out, or blah blah blah,
Well,
does that.
yeah, but it's rightfully asked too. Like, I'm excited for this story. I really am. But it's also like it was keeping me in check as well. It's like, okay, well, you're talking about it, so that must mean you're close. And I keep telling myself it's close. And then I see it and I'm like, you're not close. I'm kidding. No, I am closer. I'm really, really happy with the story that I'm engaging with. And I just need to trim it, do whatever I gotta do, tighten it up, and make it a movie ass fucking movie, and be on my merry way. There's something else I was gonna say too, on top of because you were talking about perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and just the idea of just like taking a step back and regrouping and coming back. We talked about this with Carly a little bit when we talked about like going back to our old inspirations, like what inspired us, and
Yeah.
kind of going back to our childhood and get our like childlike mind kind of sparking about again. And
Yeah.
that just kind of complete, it's almost like a dry erase board with so
Mm-hmm.
much scribbles and shit that just finally got wiped away from just like
Yeah.
going back and saying like, and seeing what my script is with fresh eyes, and then finally
Yeah.
I read it and I'm like, oh no, there's some really good shit in this.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
you don't have the confidence that you don't think it's going to be good because all you've been doing
Has
for
been destroying it.
13 hours a day is literally tweaking it and fixing it and writing a little bit here and there, staring at a wall for 3.5 hours, making mac and cheese, burn it, and then you fucking hate it. And then you go back to writing and you're just angry. Everything happens. But then once you get to that moment of like, I don't know if this is good, and you just don't feel that creative spark again, it's so much easier to just take a step back and just engage with something that always makes you happy and inspires you,
Yeah.
for maybe the same reasons why you wrote the script in the first place. Who knows?
Right.
Maybe you have to take another revisit sometimes, or maybe there's just another movie on Netflix. You're just like, well, fuck, I've been waiting to watch this movie. I'm just going to take a break and just fucking watch it. It's an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hour, big fucking deal. It is what it is.
I think
You
I'm gonna
just do
jump
it.
into what you're saying.
Yeah.
With the whiteboard.
Yeah.
This is I love the metaphor because
Thank you.
it is. This is an extremely challenging process at this point, because when you're giving people your film or your script or whatever for feedback, they're literally reading it with the intent of finding problems. So it is emotionally exhausting because all you hear are problems. So you get hit in the head so many times with, these are all the problems, these are the problems, here are more problems, that you mentally think, you get to a point where you think, my work is awful, right?
Right.
And it's very interesting because I'm reading this book right now called David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
And it's about underdogs.
Yeah.
And there's this phenomenon and it makes perfect sense, that if you are a little fish in a big pond, sometimes it can discourage you so much that it takes you away from what you were going to do in the first place. So they did the study where Harvard students, people who got into Harvard, who like loved math and science and stuff like that, they were seeing how many of them actually come out graduating still with that degree, basically.
Right.
And versus a not as high caliber school, less selective school, and the students in there, and how they, how many of them go in to stay within their profession, stuff like that. And they show that even despite, you would think that the weakest students at Harvard Business School are probably smarter or at least the same as the strongest students in a less high caliber school,
I'd
right?
assume, yeah.
Assume. But the problem is the student, the weaker student in Harvard gets beat down so much that they don't believe themselves anymore when they have just as much capability as the person who was in the not as prestigious school who does who's in the top class, the big fish in a small pond thing.
Interesting.
And because of that, there are less people like, do you see what I'm trying to say?
I
like,
do.
That where you are in your environment and stuff like that, you have to have, it's all about perspective. So
Yes.
when you're in that zone where all you hear is negative crap, you have to get out of it after a certain point, because you will get to a point where you think it's awful and you will quit.
Mm-hmm.
You will quit. And you don't want to get to that point. You cannot get to that point. And that's where so many projects die, is they probably, are editing and they get to a point where they're very close, but all they hear is, these are all the problems. These are all the problems. These are all the problems. Right. And they just can't take it anymore. And they just are like, well, this piece of work is just shit. It's just terrible.
Right. And it's
and
even
then they
more
give up.
fucked up.
Yeah. And then
exactly.
they give up. Yeah. And that's what this book is saying, is that like, there's this fine line. It's an inverted U curve, basically. So it's not always the best when you go to the best college, that's the most selective college, and not those people are the most successful, because the problem is you get to a certain point where if you're just slightly in the bottom part of the curve, you're going to be so discouraged by everybody else relative to you that it will make you quit. Now, if you put that same person who was on the bottom of the curve in Harvard and you put them in a less prestigious school and they become a big fish in a small pond, their confidence increases so much that they believe in themselves to the point that they do actually succeed and go and chase their dreams, type of thing.
Because they had a fresh perspective.
Yes, because and so it was. So then I guess the conclusion is that, like, when you're in this, and I'm realizing this, is when you're in this, and I've had a lot of friends tell me this when they give me the notes, but it's hard when you're in it. They say, look, I know you're like really, you feel really depressed and like just feel like the work what you're doing is not good enough, but they're like, you have to realize the people who are giving you feedback are literally watching it to find problems with it.
Right. Always. Always.
Is always. And so if you can think of it from that aspect and know that, like, hey, yes, all you're hearing is how awful or of all these problems, that's not the reality. The reality is that they're just looking for things to make it better. And yes, it's going to be problems. So that helped me a lot, because I did get to a point where I was just like, look, I could feel that I was getting burned out, because all I heard was like, oh, you need to fix this part and fix this part and fix this part and fix. It was just things that need to be fixed, which just made me feel like, well, I guess the whole movie just needs to be fixed. Like this whole movie is just effed, But
yeah, and then you're just swimming in that fucking despair.
Yeah, for all of that. But taking a break from it and coming back and being like, oh, this film is actually really good. It is actually really good. And yes, I see where some of these notes are, and I can now step outside of myself and see that objectively, or is it objectively or subjectively?
No, objectively.
Yeah, objectively.
Yeah.
Objectively now allows me to creatively work through and fix those problems, where before I was impeded by this lack of confidence in the project itself. Does that make sense?
Right. Well, because in a way, like for me, I'm a very sensitive boy. So sometimes like when I get a note or something, especially from a friend of mine, and it really fucking hurts, like, hey man, if it serves the story though, that's the thing that I need, like that I learned in that moment. Like when I was writing in high school, just like these little short films just shooting with friends, and when they come back with like, this isn't funny, like I don't like this, like this
It's
isn't
hard.
good, like what makes you think this joke worked? It's like, it worked in my head. Like, what do you, shut up, like fuck you. And you just get so emotionally
angry.
Yeah, you get angry, and then you start coming back at them, and then you start to realize with cooler heads that, oh, maybe I could have changed that joke.
Maybe I could tweak it. Maybe it could be better here. Maybe it could. Yeah, man.
But I was wearing my heart on the sleeves when I was in high school. I just didn't know any better. So I was like, fuck you. Like, what do you know about writing? You don't know, not a writer. It's just like, you don't know writing. You just like, and what makes you think, Adam, that you're a writer too? You're you're a tubby kid who still plays Halo. Like, shut up. You're not anything more special than them. So I had to check my ego, thinking that I was already above it. And then once I come back from that, then I realize, oh, I mean, I could have changed that. Or looking back, instead of having the no confidence that I didn't have, and I still sometimes like goes up and down with my confidence. If I don't feel good about it, I have to just take a beat with it.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to take a moment to myself, because maybe the emotions I'm engaging with are not really the emotions that mean what it is.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes perfect sense. It's
I'm not angry in that moment forever. I'm just in that moment.
Right. Yeah. And it's the like, you're valid to feel how you feel, right? Like you can't, but it's like, how do you, it's deciphering, am I feeling this way just because I had this expectation that I was going to get this sort of feedback, right? Or 100%. Am I feeling this way because I really, really don't believe in the feedback that is being given to me? You had to separate those two. Yeah.
And so I get it. One of those polar opposites.
Yes. You know, and you have to make that decision, because obviously not all feedback is great too. Not all feedback is useful, or not all feedback there's no rule that you have to take all the feedback, right? Because it is ultimately your film, and you are the one with a vision. Somebody's just giving you their opinion, right? So not all opinions have to be accepted, but it's funny because I'm like really excited about this, because this is literally the spot I'm in is the processing of all these opinions and all this feedback, and understanding what is actually valuable to you, and what is a taste difference, and what is a, but within those, you still react to everything pretty similarly, So I totally get it, because like the first time I showed Ursley to like a key stakeholder, which is the distributor person, I expected them to be like, this is amazing, like perfect, type thing. I didn't get that. And it hurt so much. And I was I think my initial was, I hurt, then I was angry, and then I was like, oh, I guess my movie is shit. Right? Like that was like the process of it. But then after I was able to deal and take some time from feeling those emotions, then I could actually go back and be like, oh, well, they weren't wrong. Like, I can see where things can be shortened, and
would they give you notes in those moments?
It was more like
what they would react.
The note that I got was that, hey, you should probably chop off at least 10 minutes from this film. And like where it is right now, it's not going to get into anything, basically. It was very harsh, but that's kind of what you want too, right? Like you don't want people just telling you how great it is, if you're, especially if you're, you want honesty and everything. And so that's, but I think that's what separates good filmmakers or experienced filmmakers from not experienced filmmakers, is your ability to take feedback and step away from your ego.
Yeah. I mean, everybody should.
Yeah.
because your ego is checked in that moment, regardless, whether
Yeah.
you like it or not. You are putting literally your film on a pedestal,
Right.
and for everybody to consume and view and shit like that.
Mhm.
And of course, you're going to run into those people who are going to be like, I don't get it. This doesn't
Right.
make sense. You could
Right.
easily change or take off 10 minutes. And that's the other thing too. Like the notes don't. Do you know this writer named Dan Harmon? He created Community. He co-created Rick and Morty.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He said one time that when he was working for NBC on Community,
Yeah.
he realized that the notes that he was being given are always going to be like asshole notes to him specifically,
Right.
because he would, he was very like not demanding, but he was very like lenient on his ideas. He's like, I think we should go with this, like, and NBC would push back and he would say no. And then those notes from NBC, because they just hold a grudge, would be coming at you, and the notes would sometimes be way more severe than they should be. Like way
Mhm.
more, like it's like and I'm not saying like the notes that you were given were absolutely harsh, but his idea was, I'm not gonna take your notes to heart, but I'm gonna analyze it.
Yes.
I'm going to analyze it, and I'm going to really understand what your note truly
What
means,
it means.
because
Yes.
what I really wanted it, because Dan Harmon said this it was on a podcast. He was like, because when I first see that note, the one thing I want to do is hit that person in the head with a 2x4. Like, I don't like that at all. But then I have
Yes.
to come back and say, wait, why did you make this note in the first place? Like,
Yeah.
why this note? Because then you start to play that scene or that sequence or whatever. You reread the script and you realize that that note doesn't make sense. Then you realize that, oh, the note is void. It's nothing. It's truly, truly nothing. And, or sometimes it would be a note, but it could be meant to be interpreted in many different ways. Whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is that the notes are there supposedly to improve the story. That's what notes was explained to me, especially going into like film club and stuff like that. I always took notes as like not an opportunity for you to be a better writer, but the opportunity for the story to be better,
Right.
and you take those opportunities, but sometimes those opportunities they don't make a lick of fucking sense
Yeah.
at all. And it's like, why did you make this note? It's like, but the real reason is that guy or that girl or whatever just didn't like what you said the last time you talked to them or whatever, so they felt like they can do this, or vice versa. It might be like they're not giving you the right notes you want because they're just too much of a nice person. They just don't want to tell you that, like, oh, this scene I had a problem with. But because they just want to be nice to you, they're just gonna be like, it's all great, it's all good, it's all good. And it's not that I don't respect those people. I don't like that as a response. You know what I mean? Like, I'm looking for a hard, honest response. And for you to be like, no, it's perfect, it's great, it's not. And I know you're lying to me. Like, I know there's could be something that could be changed. Even if it's bullshit, I'm still gonna read it. I'm still going to take that note, maybe not to heart, because I did a long ass time ago. Not a long ass time ago. I still take shit to heart. I mean, what am I talking about? I take my cooking to heart. If somebody says like, this burger tastes like garbage, I'm like, you taste like garbage. Like, I'm just like, I get our heart broken and shit like that. But I like to engage with the people who are worth engaging if I know they're going to improve the story. Not so much like, oh, well, my buddy who I worked with is going to read my script. It's like, no, but is that buddy like also who loves writing and movies just as much as Christine and Adam and everybody else who we worked with in the film industry? I'd much rather trust the notes coming from an art director than my buddy next door. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to take that.
I think you nail something with, you have to dissect the notes that you get and understand why.
Dan Harmon said that.
Yeah, exactly why you're getting that note. Because here's another thing. I'm going to use a metaphor.
Yes.
Like when you go to a doctor and you say this part hurts, the weird thing about your body is, even though your shoulder hurts, it could be coming from an entirely
different
unrelated point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same thing with the notes too. You might get a note about one thing,
Right.
like, oh, I don't like this scene, or like this scene is too long, or blah. But they're really just, it's only that way because of some other problem attached to it.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
It's quite fascinating.
The notes
Like
already came with baggage. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
And you have to really go in and dissect, like, okay, instead of taking it completely literal. I mean, some notes,
right.
But like if someone was saying, hey, this scene is too long, you can't just be like, all right, I'm just gonna chop the scene, or I'm just gonna shorten it. You have to know why, because maybe it's not long, maybe it feels long because there's no music, or maybe it feels long because people don't understand why that scene is important. Right. Maybe, and that's
so like, then you think you have to kill your darlings for no fucking reason.
Right? And so that's why the dissecting of during this note process, I think that's the biggest thing I've learned through this process, is you can't take all the notes literal. You have to really sit and understand, when people say this, what do they really mean? Right? Because you gotta because the thing is, like, people aren't always the best articulating how they feel, or articulating what it is that feels wrong. They just know it feels wrong, but they can't exactly tell you why or how to solve that. You know, they can only say, oh, the scene
feels
just
too
feels long. Yeah. This feels long. Or like, I don't understand why we need the scene, or like, I don't understand why this, and so you have to get to the root of the problem as to, like, okay, why is it feeling long to them? Is it because, so having those in-depth conversations with people that you value their opinion with is pretty mind-blowing. And an example, I'm trying to say examples in Ursley that won't give away stuff in Ursley, but what I noticed that I was doing a lot was I was giving, visually and audio wise, A equals C, but I'm missing the plus B, like either visually or like audio wise and stuff, and hoping that they would make the connection of plus B.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And what I'm realizing is, no, if you, the reason that you have to have that plus B is there's a million different ways people can interpret something.
Yes.
And you cannot assume that everybody's going to reach the same plus B conclusion. What was happening is I would have A and C, and they would form their own A, the plus B, but it would not be the plus B I wanted them to form. It would be like 5 different. I mean, there was still like 70% would get that plus B, but that like 30% that didn't get that plus B, it was very confusing to them. You know, they would make their own thing. And I think that's the crazy and beauty of films, and why it's so difficult is that everybody has their own mind, and how you process things is not the same as how somebody else is going to process that same information.
Right.
And that's where it's difficult, because you need to figure out a way to visually and audio and whatever get everybody to follow the same beats, when everybody thinks for their own selves and has multiple million different ways that they process information. I think that's been the most like fascinating thing during this process of doing audience test screenings, because I'll go ask somebody and they're like, oh yeah, this is what happened. I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
How did you get that conclusion? You know?
But how many movies have you seen that are like that? Like, you go to a buddy's house and you talk about the movie, and like, you're like, that's not what the movie's about. Like, what are you talking about? Oh my gosh, Nikki is in the
Nikki's in the house,
in the Instagram chat, and we miss you, Nikki. We love you.
You very much. Yes.
Goodness gracious, get on the podcast, for Christ's sake.
Nikki is like,
what are you doing with your life?
Key PA, probably up and coming second, in my opinion. She is awesome, and she's been working on some cool stuff back in Austin, but hopefully soon we'll be working together again on set, or we'll see you for a nice alcoholic beverage.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Stop it. I'm
But
blushing.
but that to go back to that has been the most mind-blowing thing to me, is remembering that how I process information is completely different from how other people may.
And that's not
process
to
information.
discredit other people's
No,
way of seeing
not at all.
Worsley or whatever
You
you
just
may,
have
you
to,
know?
I think as a filmmaker, you just have to account for that. I think that's what good filmmakers do, and why there are blockbusters and why there are not blockbusters. There is the ability to account for all the different possibility ways that people process information, and either if it's an important plot line, and you want people to make that conclusion, you have to do the job to help people of all different mental processing abilities to reach that same conclusion.
Yeah.
That's the crazy part. So that's why
Yes.
these, like, doing these test screenings has been like really mind-blowing, because I'm like, all right, we solved this problem. And yes, maybe it's like you're digging at it. So like maybe the first time you get the note, 90% of the people feel the same way, right? So then you go in, you tweak it, and then you're like, cool, I fixed it. And then you do the test screening. It's like, all right, now 70% of the people still feel that way. You're like, oh crap. So you go in and you're like, okay, how do I make it clear? You can go and fix some stuff. And then the next time it's like 40% of people still feel that way. And you're like, what the F? And you get to the point where finally, or you never do, and you have to live with it and be like, I'm fine if 2% of the people still don't get it, you know?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So that's been the very interesting process. And having those in-depth conversations with the people who give you those notes, and understanding like, wait, how did you reach that conclusion? You know?
Right. So
Yeah.
So then can I know we're coming up to an hour. Are you're good on time, right?
We can finish. Yeah. We can let's maybe land on this topic and kind of come to a
well, because
but
I actually have one question for me to
good.
ask, and it's about test screenings.
Okay.
So for test screenings, is that what is the idea and the goal for these test screenings is to reach to the point of how commercially viable your film is to an audience? Like, is that what it is? Or
no, it serves multiple purposes. So
okay.
I think for me the biggest one is making sure that what you intend for the film, for the audience to experience, is the same as how the audience actually experiences it. Because I can think that, oh, I put out something, and like how I process the information, that how I experience it is going to be the same as my audience.
Right.
Well, the test screening will show whether that's the case or not.
I see.
You see what I'm saying?
I do see.
So I'm using the test screenings to be like, what's confusing to you? Or did you understand this major plot point that is important to me as a filmmaker for you to understand? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And okay, so from there I'm able to gauge like what still needs to be fixed, or what I'm okay to live with, you know? So like there's a major plot point in Ersley that has been a huge pain in my ass, that I thought was easy to understand because of how I process information and how deep within the film I am in. But having done multiple screenings, I've been slowly carving at it and fixing it, you know? So I think I'm at the point where like there's still like 30% of people who don't get this major plot point, which is still not good for me. Like, I want to get to the point where maybe 2% people don't get this major plot point type thing. So it's been like going in and adding extra lines, ADR, or like extra pickup shots, or simply editing it just a little bit differently can help bridge that understanding of this major plot point.
Right. Yeah.
And it came to that conclusion of A plus B equals C, and if you don't have plus B, then that plus B could be anything.
Yeah.
So that's what I was learning, was there was this one major plot point where I had A and C, visually, audio, whatever, all sorts. So people were getting A and people were getting C, but they were forming their own plus B that was not the plus B I wanted, and some of the interpretations were actually quite interesting. I was like, oh, I don't hate that interpretation, but it's not what you're going to, if you come to this other completely different conclusion, you're not going to get the payoff for the rest of the film. That's how crucial this particular plot point is, in my opinion. Right.
That makes sense.
Like it's okay if there's certain, not everybody's going to get everything 100%. Like, it's just not, I mean, maybe you can't, but like, it's very difficult to get to that because everybody processes information differently. Like, I'm sure Christopher Nolan's Tenet, like, nobody, like, most 70% of the people probably still don't get it,
including me. I literally watched it the other day, and I'm still like scratching my head.
Exactly, but that's also the beauty of the film. It makes you want to rewatch it over and over and over again to see
Hence, I rewatched it. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So there is a fine line, right? It's that fine line of like, how much do you dumb it down so that everybody can get it immediately? And how much do you say, hey, I'd rather them be puzzled by it just slightly and want to rewatch it and finally make the conclusion for their own, right? So I mean,
well, that's what makes a movie brilliant to me. That's what makes lots of directors brilliant. I mean, Fincher to Lynch to Chloe Zhao to Elaine May. Yeah, they all have their unique way of, like, especially are you familiar with Elaine May? She wrote and directed. No, I don't know if she directed The Birdcage, but I know she wrote The Birdcage with Robin Williams.
I haven't,
and stuff like that.
Actually.
Okay, she also wrote this movie called Mikey and Nikki, and it's kind of a mobster movie, but it's like but it's about like two best friends who have to, like, one of them betrayed each other. And it's such a heartbreaking, amazing film that a lot of people felt like the third act was where everything, I don't agree with this, but where the third act sort of like fell off for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it fell off for me one bit. Like, I love the movie but I watched it with somebody who is not part of the industry, who doesn't quite understand what the story elements are, what makes it a movie, what doesn't, which is my own mother. And she has a completely different way of watching the movie. And when she watched that same movie with me, I cried and she was like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm just like, no, it's heartbreaking. You don't get it. It's just like, it's a different reaction all the same way. And it does not mean that the movie is terrible. This is where a lot of filmmakers, including myself, get in the way of it all, because I wear my heart on my sleeves. That you got to understand that everybody has their own fucking conclusion with these movies, and don't expect them to
love it.
Have their own B formed when they already got A and C. They already, you did your job. You got to A to C, but the B part, that's where shit is going to be, kind of going all over the place. Maybe, it's subjective. It's subjective. And no, not a lot of people, probably me as well, you won't really understand that. And, it's, you got to understand to like it's not the fact of like somebody hates a movie for whatever purposes, but it's the fact of like they engaged with it. They thought they really truly think about it. I didn't like Tenet the first go around, but then the second go around, I'm like, it's all right. You know what I mean? I'm like, it's okay. But I know like probably in 5 years from now, I'm like, I don't know. I was such a dummy. This movie is about this, 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 this. I'm like, what are these people? Are they out of their minds? Sometimes I just need time for me to really understand and really engage with myself and how I watch content and how I watch movies and shit like that for the sake of story and shit like that, to then come back around and realize, oh, this is actually really good, or no, this is terrible. It doesn't hold up. Like, it's awful. It's not good, And I've definitely watched some of those movies and I'm just like, why did I think when I was 5 years old, this was a fucking masterpiece? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
Makes sense.
but then you do actually watch films that you're like thought they were a masterpiece when you were young, and you watch them again, you realize that they are still a masterpiece. That's when
Oh yes,
that's pretty mind blowing, I think.
Oh my god, I still have the same. It's so funny because there's only two movies in my life that has ever really like shook me to my core, and that is Jaws and The Exorcist.
Jaws.
The Exorcist has given me the same exact fucking feeling with Jaws, and that is I am very scared when I step into a church. Like I'm still terrified of all that fucking paranormal shit. And that movie destroyed it. Like, that movie made me scared of ghosts and all that stuff. That's why like I always try to be macho about it. Like, I don't believe in ghosts, try to pull a Ghostbusters. I ain't afraid of no ghosts. But really, I'm terrified. I'm actually terrified because I seen that movie and I'm like, I don't want anything to do with that. And, of course, like when you grow up, whatever, but you still have that fear, especially the fear of me going into the fucking water. Like, I have family in Hawaii and I still refuse to go into the water. Like, and they're like, what's the matter with you? And I'm just like, have you seen Jaws? Doesn't end well. That's not good. Actually, it does end well because the captain shoots the shark, but it's not the point.
Yeah.
That's not the point. Listen, spoilers for a 30-year-old movie. You guys have problems. You guys have problems. I'm sorry, but you guys have problems. Then close your ears or skip over that bit. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like, because to me, I love Ursula. I the story and everything about it, I love it. And I also know I also know that other people don't know you either, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like this movie speaks volumes about your personality and about Christine, really. And I know, by the way, it still speaks volumes for Camille as well, because I'm sure she feels the same tetherness to it as you do. But in all the same, you still made something that you thought. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say as far as I would say you thought, but you've kind of tried to come to the conclusion of somebody having B set when A and C is met. When you already have that thing and you're like, okay, so this is going to be like universal to every audience member in this movie theater, watching this movie. They're going to come to the same exact conclusion, and I know that can't be easy. I know that can't be easy.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna bring it to a landing.
A landing. We could.
And I think the conclusion is this: is that a good filmmaker can't make a piece of art without realizing that everybody's going to watch it with different perspectives.
Absolutely.
And you shouldn't watch a film with only one perspective. You should try to go in gauging a film through all the possible ways people can interpret it. And you either live with those interpretations that are different from your own, and if you can't, you got to figure out how to make it different or better so that you can get it to match the perspective that you want people to actually gain. But you cannot go in assuming that everybody is going to react and have the same experiences in a way that will make how you process the film the same as the way they process the film. So I think that's what determines a good and a bad filmmaker is that ability to include the audience. And I think that's why like Steven Spielberg and some are so great, because they're able to get you to feel unanimously what their intended feeling is. Does that make sense?
From the very beginning to the very end. Yeah.
Yeah.
And still engaged with that too, by the way, because now we're in a generation where 95% of people lose their fucking attention after 7 seconds. Like that's just kind of the world we live in and stuff. Yeah. And to have someone engage with a movie for an hour and a half, 2 hours, your job's done in a way. As a filmmaker, you know, you got them to enjoy it. It could be a Hallmark movie. Doesn't matter. You still got that person to stop being on their phone for literally 2 hours, or stop engaging with pausing it to get up and fuck off to nowhere and then come back, you know, or whatever. They still maintain that engagement from beginning to end, you know, and that's a lot to ask for nowadays. It feels like now that we live in, you know, Reels and TikTok and stuff. Yeah. It's kind of brutal.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw this in your car.
Okay. Yeah, my keys. Cool. All right. Anyway, so that's the part that's been, I think, fascinating. Is it's something I'm still learning. Is how do I universally make everybody feel the same way that I want them to feel? Yeah. And that's a lot harder than it seems.
It is, but you're getting through it, and now you've got a fucking movie, Christine.
Yeah, movie-ass movie is exactly what it is. Rosalie, movie-ass movie. I'm so close, man.
I know.
Yeah.
You can feel it. You feel it.
Feel it. Yeah, I can feel it. I'm just tweaking, and like now, like it's
until somebody tells you no.
Until somebody destroys it again. Yes.
Yeah.
So, that's okay.
Well,
I just have to remember.
Yeah. Don't think that your shit will be destroyed, Kristen. But you know, it's I see what your point is, though.
Yeah, people are just trying to make it better.
Well, yeah, there's also people who love to sabotage as well. There's definitely tons of people, but you can pick those people out in a litter. They're like, it's almost like the black sheep of an entire herd. You just point it out and you know exactly. I mean, at least I can. I know it's hard to read people sometimes, but working retail, oh man, you know the fakers with the reelers. Holy shit. It's like have you ever seen the movie They Live?
Mm-mm.
Okay, it's a great fucking movie. It's by John Carpenter, who did Halloween and
that's probably why.
The Thing and stuff.
Is it a horror film?
It is, but it's silly horror. It's silly.
Okay.
Silly. You know, you can watch it with friends and stuff. It's a great time. But basically, the main character gets a pair of glasses and can see the aliens in human disguise.
Oh,
stuff like that.
Yes, I've seen parts of this. Yes, I have seen this.
It's sort of a metaphor especially when you get to the third act. That's a metaphor to differentiate between the real to the fake, you know, to the people who are the truth and the people who are not the fucking truth, who say they're the truth, the manipulators of the world and stuff like that, you know. Yeah, I guess that's it. Christine, you got anything?
No, that's it. That's the Get Realisms podcast.
That's the Get Realisms podcast, ladies and gentlemen. GetRealisms.com to pick up the book, and also UrsleyFilm.com. Please.
Yes, Ursley Film.
Listen to the old podcast. Get hyped for the movie. It's going to be a fun one, you guys. That's been it. Instagram, Facebook. That has been the Get Realisms. Thank you guys so much. Goodbye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.